Welcome everybody to In the Shed. My name is Troy Shaw. I will be your host today. And with me is David Griffiths. He's going to be my co-host. How's it going, David?
It's going great. How's it going, Troy?
It's going awesome. We all have some beer here, and we have our first guest for this very first show of In the Shed, Mr. David Zychek. How's it going, David?
Man, it's great. It's a beautiful day.
It is a beautiful day.
We're in the shed.
We are in the shed today.
Drinking beer.
Drinking some beer, having a good time. First, let's talk about how we came up with the name In the Shed.
Well, this is Dave. It's my shed. It's my backyard. And Troy and I rock out here all the time, and we barbecue and have a good time. And then Troy had a splendid idea of doing a little podcast where we get local musicians and artists, and who knows what it's going to be.
I always liked that Monty Python little sketch where the guy his nickname was Two Sheds. And they said, well, how'd you get the name Two Sheds? He says, well, I had a shed and I was thinking about buying another one, but I never did. But the name stuck. Okay.
Well, maybe we can get another shed someday.
Maybe we'll work our way up to that.
Yeah.
I got room to expand.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's get down to it, David.
Yeah, bro.
Because what we're wanting to do here is learn a little bit about some of the local musicians and local talent in the Waco area, in McLennan County, and maybe expand out to some other areas, Austin and Dallas as the time goes on. But we want to start with you because you are basically a legend of the Central Texas music scene, a local guitar hero. And we wanted to start out and do this first episode with you.
Well, I appreciate it very much, man. I'm so glad to be here.
Let's go way back.
Okay.
When you were a kid, was there a particular band or song or a moment in time that set off that little spark inside you that made you want to pick up the guitar and play music? Do you remember that moment in time?
Oh, yeah. Junior high talent shows in Houston. And there was a band. They all played Fender Jazz Masters. They all had the white Tolex Tremolux amps, and everybody had the Fender reverb units, and oh my God, it was kind of when that song came out eventually called Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo. Do you remember that one?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it had a line in there about a band called the Jokers. They were laying it down. Well, it was that whole scene was kind of going on around Houston at that time. And the band's name was the Raydells. And they were just a local hot band, and you could find them doing gigs like that because the lead singer I think he was in high school. He was a couple of years older, but they would come in and do the talent shows and stuff. And I mean, they had the look. They were all dressed in suits. They all had the baddest Fender guitars, and the amps were meticulous. Nothing had been just beat to crap. Everything looked great and sounded great. Oh man, that just made me absolutely you go to a music store and just the smell of a new case or something like that, would just make you just go nuts.
That's awesome.
I was into it.
So what was your first axe?
Oh, my first axe? Well, my first good axe. And my dad he lived up to his word. He gave me just a shit box Silvertone guitar. Cost $15, and it was not electric.
Acoustic?
Yeah, just acoustic guitar.
I think I got one of those in the closet.
Ski slope of a neck, everything was.
How old were you when you got that?
I think 10.
Okay.
10, but it took me 2 years to get it together on that because it was just like, you needed a vice grip to play it. And I had these little books that would take a C chord and take it from the simplest form, which was one finger on the first fret on the B string.
Was that the Mel Bay book?
Oh, yeah, it was Mel Bay all the way, dude. And then after you got that, you worked your way up to putting your second finger on the second fret of the D string. And, man, it took me a while. I mean, I was really ready to about give up because, really, it was so hard. It was just kind of like,
Kids got it so easy nowadays, don't they?
You put a challenge in front of a kid to see if they're really going to do it. That's
Stick a $100 Ibanez in their hand is way better than we ever had.
Way better. But my dad lived up to his word, and when I did finally kind of convince him that, and I could play some songs and stuff, he said, "Well, now we're not going to have any of that rock and roll in the house, right?" And I go, You're right, Dad. King's X behind the back. You're right, Dad. Oh, yeah, just folk music and church songs. Yeah.
A little Lawrence Welk.
Oh, yeah. I've got a bubble pipe in the back there, you know. But he got me a Gibson ES330, and he got me a little Fender Princeton amp in 1963. Everything was brand new, and it was the shit, and it was amazing. And then another, this I know this isn't part of your question, but a pivotal thing happened at that time. And my next door neighbor that had been there in Houston had moved, and the house was vacant. And lo and behold, the guy that moved in worked for Chicago Musical Instruments, and they carried Epiphone and Gibson and everything, and he was a professional musician.
So you got friend prices on that.
We started getting, well, my dad started doing his tax work and stuff. We started getting all kinds of gear, and the guy would just bring to me anything that was a new product. He would say, man, just keep this for a month and tell me what you think. And it would be like the Maestro Fuzz, it would be an Echoplex, it would be a piggyback amp of some sort, and he got me all kinds of old amps and stuff. So that was all those things together. It was just everything just went boom.
Wow.
For me.
Do you have
meant to be,
Do you still have any of that old equipment?
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah.
Especially the old Princeton would be really nice.
Oh man, I know. Well, unfortunately, that the answer to that is no, because left to my own devices, and then when I did finally get out and started trying to make a living playing, man, that was the hardest thing. And the thing that always happened was I couldn't hold on to the stuff. I just couldn't hold on.
Had to hawk it or whatever.
Well, not hawk it. I would usually have to sell it or trade it to get to the next thing that I really felt like I needed.
Sure.
Yeah.
So what was your first band? How old were you did you have a band in high school?
I got into a band. The two guys, the bass player and drummer, now they were in high school, and the singer was in high school, and I was in 8th grade, so I hadn't made it there yet. But that was it. It started out named after a car, like a lot of bands at the time. Somebody had a Nova. I said, oh, the Novas, okay. So we were the Novas for a while, and then we changed our name and worked our way up to the Soul Survivors, and turned into a 5-piece, added a keyboard player so we could do all the cool Animals tunes that were out at the time.
So were you pretty much a cover band at that time?
Yeah, we had 2 originals, and the rest was cover stuff. Paul Revere and the Raiders. Soul music was real big in Houston at the time.
Sam and Dave and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, Knock on Wood, things like that. There was just a lot of diverse things going on in Houston, and it was a lot of music in Houston. It really was great.
Still is.
Yeah.
Do you remember the first time you played in front of a crowd?
Yeah. Oh, it wasn't. Those days were, all of those days for a long time were pretty uneventful, really. I mean, people would kind of dance or they'd listen or something, but I was kind of scared to be up there anyway, so I was usually kind of just hanging in the back. I didn't really want anybody to notice that I was up there. I just wanted to play the songs I liked.
Yeah. Were you a good guitar player then? Do you consider yourself, when you think back to your younger self, could your fingers move like they can move now at all?
Well, the thing that happened was I grasped concepts pretty quickly. And if I was having trouble figuring it out on my own, for starters, normally what I needed was just somebody to give me a little push and show me a couple of things. And that's what happened. The band I was talking about right away, the Raydells, had a rhythm player. And I think at one time I kind of liked his sister. And so we worked a deal to where, I'd go over and I'd get to see her, pay him $1, and he'd show me stuff for an hour. And I would just ask him, okay, what's the rhythm part to whatever song?
How long did it take? It took me forever to equate a C open chord with a bar chord. It took me like a year. And it was just like, when it hit me, it was just like, oh my God.
Yeah,
because I never had a lesson, formal lesson. I had the Mel Bay book. I had stuff like
Yeah, and so I saw those guys doing all that stuff, and you just kind of go, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
The bar chord was just a big breakthrough. The other thing that was a big breakthrough was then after I had my rhythm lessons and I learned what 12 bar and a 1-4-5 sort of thing was like, and you go, wow, that's 99% of the songs that are out right now, and kind of realize, wow, major to minor and bars is bar chords. It's all just like, it was like, wow, opening up all these worlds. And so then we asked the lead player to come over one night to kind of give me a lesson, and he basically said, man, all you need to know if you want to bend strings and stuff. He looked at my guitar and he goes, you've got a wound G string. And I go, yeah, that's the way it comes in the pack. He goes, oh my God. He said, you need an unwound G. And I, really? Yeah. Here, take this. Let's put this on your guitar. So we got an unwound G, put it on. And he said, now, he showed me a Chuck Berry lick, and I went, holy crap. Then it was just kind of like another bam, door opens up, and then I was just off and running. I mean, I'd get those concepts, and then, so to answer your question, I was quickly pushed forward to where I wasn't the rhythm player anymore. I knew enough to play Chuck Berry leads, and I could do all those things, and I was happy to do them. I mean, it felt great, so I kind of moved up a little bit.
You learned the pentatonic and all those other ones, and then the rest was history.
Yeah, I didn't even know what the names to any of that was at the time, but that's just stuff you learn later on.
Who was the first guitar player that you can remember back in the day that you saw either live or just heard that kind of like stood out and like, holy crap, this guy's awesome?
Well, there was local guys, that were all like in my neighborhood. There was another really big band down there called Neil Ford and the Fanatics, and they had a guitar player that had all kinds of effects, and he could really solo, and these guys were really big on the scene. Me and my friends would people would practice in garages, all up and down this area where I lived, and I just heard somebody playing a few blocks over, and we just kept playing, following the sound till we found them. Turned out that was the band. And so, but as far as real people goes, that would have to have been people like
Jimi Hendrix.
Well, it wasn't Hendrix yet. It was, we were talking George Harrison.
Okay,
right.
And Keith Richards and all those the first Invasion.
Yeah,
British Invasion
and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
So when people like Jimi Hendrix came along, and then you move on to Eddie Van Halen, were you like just blown away? Like, holy shit, people can do this with a guitar? I mean,
you were probably skilled at that point.
Oh yeah. That was that was further down the line. And the thing that was funny, when you jump to an Eddie Van Halen, I was listening to a lot of because a lot of people really wanted to kind of get into fusion jazz when Jeff Beck did Blow by Blow.
Sure, I love that album.
And there was other people too that were doing great jazz rock at the time, and there was a guitar player, Allan Holdsworth was his name, and he played these, you could never hear a pick stroke in his playing, and his fingers made these huge links.
Yeah. Holdsworth and like Steve Morris and some of those guys are just incredible guitar players, and they were never really popular.
Not that
amongst
much.
The guitar players, they were gods.
They were gods.
Yeah.
And so Holdsworth's playing to get those big leaps that he could do with his natural fingers. Well, I found that to do it, I was trying to figure out how he did some of it, and so I started adding in some tapping, and lo and behold, came to find out that Eddie, that was part of the reason he started tapping too, was trying to be able to emulate some of those more classical sounding things that had these intervals were so amazing, and see, nobody was doing anything like that at the time.
Absolutely.
So it just felt pretty good. I think we were all being inspired by a lot of the same things as things went on from there.
Yeah, that time for music was great. I mean, so many great bands and great guitar players and
tons of diversity.
It was the antithesis of what the other thing that was big at the time, which was disco.
Right.
And so naturally, everybody went towards something that pushed them rather than something that had them playing to the hustle. Yeah, I want to pick up that girl, but goddamn it, I'm not going to learn that lick. I'm not going to play that shit.
Yeah, exactly.
I might get drunk
Not
and
to
dance
take
to
anything
it.
away from Niles Rodgers, but I mean, there was that virtuoso side, and then there was that boogie side, or just.
I know we didn't want to appreciate what went into any of that, man. We wanted to be pushed by things that were technically challenging. You know, you come back later on and then you look back at all the stuff and you go, man, the production or the things these guys did with a lot of that, and you get an appreciation for it. But at the time, we just really wanted to hear people burning, man. We wanted to be pushed.
Yeah, exactly. So late 70s, I guess, is when Airborne started.
Yes, it was.
Talk about Airborne. I've just kind of recently learned about Airborne. I've heard that you were in that band. But tell me about that. How did that come about?
Came about through a friend. When I moved to Denver in 1976, I started playing more prog rock, I guess you'd say. It was another thing that was really, really hitting big at the time. I loved it. Yes, Styx at the time,
Rush.
Kansas, Rush. All of this stuff was just so great and inspiring. And in Texas, we were listening, before I moved, we were listening to Jeff Beck, we were listening to John McLaughlin, Mahavishnu Orchestra, we were listening to these jazz rock things. And then when I got to Denver, it all kind of went more into more of the art prog rock thing, which was perfect. It was just perfect. So as I did that and started playing with this band called Head First, one night there's a guy sitting in the audience and his name is Bo Hill. And he was the guy the catalyst for everything about Airborne. He was further ahead. He worked at a recording studio. He had producer chops. He had arranging skills. He knew how to work with people. He could take a scratch idea and have it, ready to be mastered in everything that he did. He could take it all through that. So with Bo there, he started encouraging the band I was in to, yeah, man, y'all sound great. And I would ask him about it. Oh, yeah, we know Bo, man. He's a pretty serious dude. So I had a lot of respect for him. Next thing we know, we save a little money and we decide to go in the studio with Bo. And I brought in a couple of songs and the keyboard player brought in a couple of songs and we cut them with Bo. And then Bo started asking me over the next year to come in and play on some of his songs. And so I'd do that. Well, then see, I never knew what was happening. But what Bo was doing is he was putting together demos to send to his buddy out in California, who was Keith Olsen, who had just done Foreigner, Double Vision, and he had done another really big record, Rhiannon and all that stuff with Fleetwood Mac.
Right.
So he was kind of becoming a big producer. So Bo, being on the crest of the wave, sent him stuff, and without me knowing it, he sent a couple of my tunes and work that I'd done on his stuff.
You singing and doing guitar both?
Mainly, yeah. It was a little both. But next thing I know, I'm getting a call from Bo saying, hey man, I'm putting together this thing, and he tells me the story of what he did, and I'm kind of blown away. And he says, we're gonna make something happen here. We're gonna put together this group, and we're going to invite record people to come and see us. I said, no kidding. So I told the guys in the band, I said, well, looks like I'm gonna kind of part ways with you, but everybody was so thrilled, So. Next thing I know, we're kind of preparing for that showcases. With Airborne wasn't even named.
You had A&R guys there?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was mainly who we played for was like vice presidents and people like that.
Cool.
Keith had serious contacts at the time. So by the time we got ourselves ready to play like our 6 or 7 songs that we had, we had brought in, on Keith's recommendation, a drummer named Mike Baird. He went on to play with Journey. John Pierce on bass, and then within our circle, we brought in a guy named Larry Stewart, who was a multi-instrumentalist, flute, sax, guitar, keyboards. And Bo's big instruments were guitar and B3 and a couple of mini Moogs. And he was great at all that stuff. So then that's what we had. We had me on guitar, Larry doubling on things, Bo doubling on things. Bo was a killer vocalist. I sang, but didn't think I was in their league. And then Larry was tremendous vocalist too. And then by the time,
did you do lead guitar in the band?
I did all the lead work.
Okay, great.
Yeah, but
was it a 5-piece then?
It was a 5-piece.
You had two guitars, you had a keyboardist, bass player, and a drummer.
Sometimes I might be the only person on guitar because of the keyboard parts.
Yeah.
Sometimes it might be 3 of us on guitar, just to get the rhythm parts nice and fat. So it just kind of depend on the song and how they wanted to do it. I always just kind of let Bo direct it. I was just learning, and they would turn me loose and say, okay, you've got the solo. And by the time we did record the record, I think I really tracked just about all the guitars. You know, we get the tones and everything. It was like, do the rhythms. Okay, double it. Okay, now let's do the other side and double that. Okay, now let's do the solos. And I found myself doing everything.
Was that your first time in the studio?
Not in the studio, no, but it was my first time on anything of that scale.
Yeah. You recorded an album. Did you go on tour? Any big bands you went on tour with? What happened there? What happened there?
That was really a tough. That was the worst bit of it all. And I'll tell you why. We got our record deal. We made our record. Our record.
How many tracks?
10 tracks.
10 tracks.
10 tracks. I had co-written 5 of them. I'm singing lead on, I think, 3 or 4 of them. So, I mean, this was really a big deal for all of us. And the guy who signed us was a guy named Don Ellis, and he was a vice president with Columbia. So we got signed with Columbia, and they said, hey, you know, between him and Keith Olsen, they were all big buds with Frontline Management and all this, the biggest management company we could have ever had. They were managing the Eagles, and so next thing you know, we've got all of our gear. We go out and purchase all the gear we need, the road cases, the gear, everything to go and do a tour. Our record is about to come out in a month. Don Ellis says, I'm going to leave Columbia. So now the guy that brought us into Columbia, who said, we've got to have these guys, and here's what we're going to give them, and tour support and everything. And I mean, you know, the world looked rosy as hell. By the time our record came out, he was gone. The record company said, we have no idea why you guys are here, and all that tour support money y'all are supposed to get, well, that's going over here to so-and-so because they're kind of the band we're really behind.
It's a tale that's been told too many times, hasn't it?
It is a terrible tale.
Yeah.
And so we just kind of limped our ass back to Denver, Colorado, went back in the studio where we had cut all of our demos, and we went back to work. And we had money from an advance we got from our publishing company, which was a Warner Chappell, huge company. We lived on that money for 2 years, and we worked our butts off to get a second record and to find another label. And it was kind of like we just, everything was like, well, yeah, that song's great. But, you know, at the time, punk music had hit. People were making records for $10,000, not $100,000, and they were just I guess you'd say the industry was in a little bit of a tailspin because they were cutting real substantial acts. Every roster for every major label got trimmed by probably 75%. Wow. People who had been making millions were all of a sudden finding themselves without a label. And we hadn't gotten to that point.
So the bottom had pretty much dropped out due to changing musical style.
Yeah, it was exactly that. I mean, it was an industry thing. It didn't just hit us. The part that hit us was Don Ellis leaving, and nobody in Columbia, you know, have any ties to us other than we were signed to them. But we weren't the people that they knew anything about. Don was the guy that brought us in, promoted us, was there by our sides when we were recording and approving everything and saying, yeah, man, we're ready to go. So, you know, if I could look back in hindsight and go, you know what we should have done, we really should have found a way on our own nickel, and we should have just went out there and found some people to open for, and we should have just hit the road rather than hit the studio.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you have a cool Airborne riff you can peel off for us right now?
There's a lick or two. This was the tune called Soldier of Fortune, which kicked off side 2. It just had a cool lick. I liked it. Went. I always liked it because it was a little bit unusual. It was like 6s over 4s.
Yeah,
so,
that is a cool lick.
Yeah. And other than that, a lot of the tunes were really just based on just great chord progressions and stuff. But that was the one I liked a lot. Remember me telling you that rather than go on the road, we went in the studio and just started cutting more songs. Eventually, I was making a little solo project for myself back in 2004, 2005 called Dead Heart Beating.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
You remember that?
Yeah, I did the website for it.
You sure did?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I figured you would. Anyway, I met a guy named Dane Spencer through another guy that was a great songwriter out of Rhode Island. He was making some records and releasing things over in Europe. So Dane said, "Man, I'd like to get behind your project." And he said, "Whatever happened to Airborne?" And I said, "Well, you know, it's funny, Dane. We've probably got plenty of songs in the can for a second record that never came out." He said, "You got to be kidding. How could we do that?" I said, "Well, man, I'll have to talk to the guys." So basically what it boiled down to is master tapes did not exist anymore. They were all stored in a studio in Colorado that at one point, and I didn't know this at the time, but I found out later, it had burned. We didn't have any master tapes.
Wow.
All we had is reference cassettes that we made straight from the 2-track tape going through some amazing board straight to a cassette. So they were amazing. But they were also older than crap. And it's kind of like, what kind of state would they be in? Well, lo and behold, you know, and once you get things digital, I was able to get all these cassettes in, and you could remove some hiss. If there's a dropout maybe in one chorus, you could cut and paste a chorus. You could do things to kind of bring it back to life. Well, we were able to do that on enough tracks to where we got a little record out of it called The Dig, and Dane, with his label called Songhouse, they released it, and I don't even know if you can find them, but it's a remarkable record as far as showing a lot of the other things we were doing after that first record.
That's cool. So what I've heard on YouTube is from the first album.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's
Because
true.
I've recently seen some Facebook posts of people putting some links to some Airborne songs.
I know. I think a lot of that has helped. You know, the Rock Candy. And the thing they did is they probably took some really good vinyl and then transferred that in, and then used some great processors that are, you know, in mastering to kind of get something. Because see, the original record never came out on CD.
Huh? Yeah.
It was only like singles and 45s, you know, vinyl. So Rock Candy, you know, doing a remastering on that and giving us CDs, that was a really good thing.
So after Airborne was done and finished in the late 70s, early 80s, what did you do? Just hang out in Denver, or where did you go from there?
Yeah, I was real comfortable in Denver, and we were working. As I said, we still felt like we had a shot, because, you know, we had tasted some glimpses of glory and greatness, and we'd been wined and dined by executives with tons of money, and we liked it. We liked not having to spend any money and people just, you know, taking care of us in that way. So we wanted more of that, so we kept working and working. But the thing was, we weren't really getting anywhere, and we weren't playing, so we were going through our money. So what would happen, I wanted to earn some money, and my little gigs in Texas kept kind of calling my name. But I put together a little trio so when I came to Texas to visit, I could get out and play, and that was the Groove Kings. It was Gary Pavlika and
I think there's
Sam
a video
Davis.
on YouTube of you guys playing down there at the river. Maybe.
Yeah,
I know
there is some of that stuff. Yeah, but that wasn't the exact band, but it was real close. It was real close. But anyways, what happened was when we got back to Denver, we hired Gary Pavlika to come up and be our permanent drummer, because Mike Baird, his home was L.A. and he was a session drummer, and so he just went right back to work when Airborne didn't take off. So sorry about that. We jokingly we called it stillborn. Because that's really totally summed it all up, man. It was I started coming back to Texas because stuff was just breaking crazy loose in Texas. They'd gone back to the 18 for the drinking age, and clubs were going nuts, and I had the little trio, and we were just a high energy trio. We wrote material of our own. We did remakes of songs in our own way, totally not even a lot of times paying proper respect to the original artists, when we would just dissect them and come up with ways of doing stuff. And we just were on, like, the energy level was off the charts. Everything was just go for the throat. It was the crowds were huge. People treated us like there was something really great going on. So I would come down and stay for a couple of weeks in Texas and kind of get my money back in order and have a great time, play Sefchick Hall, play a couple of gigs around Waco, get out, play some of the gigs we would do out in the sticks around Central Texas, and go back up to Denver, and I'd get back to work again. Work for a while, run out of money, book a cheap flight down to Texas, go back, and the Groove Kings would just rule. Well, that was working out probably better than anything. I mean, really, the Groove Kings was just catching on fire, but here I was going back, into these really arduous recording sessions back in Colorado, and we knew we had good stuff, but we couldn't get anybody to tell us we were doing anything worth a damn, and nobody was really saying, well, it looks like we might get you signed to so-and-so. Everybody was just going, oh, well, we're not sure. And then in Texas, everybody was going, yeah, man, play me some more stuff, let's... It wasn't hard to see what you would want to do. So
is that how you came to Waco?
Yeah.
What are your ties to Waco?
Well, I came to Waco immediately after finishing high school to go to school at MCC.
Okay.
And I just barely made it through 2 semesters.
Were you in the music
barely.
program
there? Didn't have it at the time.
Okay. Well, it's a good music program.
It's awesome. Now, if they would have had that at the time, I would have been in that for sure. But as close as I could get into anything artistically, when I went to MCC, all they offered, I think I looked at what was left that I could take. I had to take drama, I had to take speech, and I had to take folk dancing.
And you said, screw that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I just wasn't having it. I was there, I was registered, but by the second semester, I wasn't going to any classes, and I was ready to, be playing.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. We put together a band and found a booking agency, and they started booking us full time, and we just started playing.